So, for a while now, I've been thinking of doing a Beyblade Burst type sub-series of discussions. Might seem kind of weird considering I just finished my layer discussions recently, and while there are some parallels to how these videos will be set up, I think the way I talk about them is actually fairly different, so it should be fun to do it. But yeah, I just want to talk about how well different bays adhere to their types, how bursts adapted these bays into the types, all that stuff. And I wanted to start with stamina because I think it's the most interesting of the bunch. Though I think defense and especially balance make for good videos, attack's going to be a little bit weird, but I'll try my best when we get to it. So what is a stamina type? Well, when you think of a stamina type, you probably think of a bay that is round, somewhat frail, spins for a long time, and has a at least somewhat sharp bottom piece. And our introduction to stamina in Burst was Ragnarok Heavy Survive, and it does not a whole lot of that. Also, as a disclaimer, I'm not going to get into discs as often here. If it's relevant, I'll talk about it, but if I don't mention the disc, then just assume that it's fine enough as a stamina type part. Even if it wasn't originally a stamina part, some things are just good in multiple roles. Anyway, so looking at Ragnarok here, this thing is kind of the antithesis of stamina in terms of its layer. What is this? These points right here are very attack expected in my opinion, or at least balance. Hell, even defense would make more sense. Stamina is the last type I would think about when I look at this thing. And flipping it over, it doesn't get much better. Survive does functionally make sense as a stamina part. It is a bit closer in shape to something like Defense from Metal Fight, which is our last experience with Beyblade up until this point, but Zero G kind of flipped things around, so it makes some sense, it's okay. Although moving away from sharper tips is probably a good idea anyway, so I don't think this is too bad, but Heavy is a weird one. You would have expected Heavy to be a defense type part, as it's fairly bulky, and, well, heavy, not a stamina part. So Ragnarok is just a very, very awkward stamina type bay. It feels like it pulls a lot from defense, and its layer almost from attack. I have no idea what Ragnarok was trying to go for here, but this is how they opted to introduce stamina types in Burst for whatever reason. And Trident wasn't really much better. The layer was quite large and also has a bunch of protrusions on it. I mean, again, these all seem kind of attack or at least balance expected. And being as large as it is, with some recoil, you can maybe even argue a counter defense type of layer, but again, not stamina. And it also uses Heavy, and it has Claw, which Claw I can get behind a little bit. I mean, Flame Sagittario in Metal Fight used Claw in 45, so this is a gimmick that has been in stamina before. The tip is fairly similar to Survive, so that's close enough. Heavy is a bit weird, but yeah. The layer here is just very, very strange. And the next bay, Horror Suit, still doesn't help at all. I mean, what even is this layer supposed to be? Genuinely, when I first saw it, I thought it was a balance type layer back in 2015. I think I incorrectly assumed that Horror Suit was a balance type for a month or two because I just didn't look at the package until I got it a month after it came out. I mean, this doesn't scream stamina at all, really. It's too jagged. Balance probably makes the most sense for this design, but yeah, not stamina. At least it does use Spread, which is a balance type part, but again, some parts are good for multiple things, and I think Spread is functional for stamina. Edge? I have no idea what to even make of Edge. It's 4 lines that make a point. I guess that's kind of stamina, but like, why? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what they were cooking with Horror Suit. This is one of the weirdest motifs ever, in my opinion. We'll get to its evolution. This thing's just strange. I don't know. And yeah, this was probably the weirdest start to a type ever in Beyblade. Like, you're telling me the first 3 stamina types are Ragnarok, Trident, and Horror Suit. What even happened there? Now, our next proper bay is Yggdrasil. This one makes a bit more sense. The layer kind of seems a bit defense-oriented to some degree, but it's still fairly round. It's a weird in-between in my opinion, but it's close enough to stamina to where I'm okay with it. And then flipping it over, it does have Ring, which was originally a defense part, but again, I think it's good for both stamina or defense, it's fine. And then Gyro, kind of a wider Survive, but also free spin, that actually does feel like stamina. So yeah, Yggdrasil finally is a full stamina type bay that feels like a stamina type bay. Shocking, it took this long. And our last single layer is Chaos. Technically the layer did come out before Yggdrasil, and in that case it was our first like proper stamina type layer really. I mean, this thing does look like a stamina type. I don't have problems with the layer, but it would take a few months before we get the full combo for this thing, and the full combo, it's definitely a combo. Gyro is perfectly fine. I have zero issues with this. Oval though, Why do we have an oblong disc for a stamina type? That makes zero sense. Oval's a weird choice. If this was like spread, this would be a perfectly fine stamina type. Probably the best stamina type we've ever had in Burst up until this point. But oval just makes this thing really, really awkward, even if the layer is a solid example of a stamina type. So yeah, single layers just had a very awkward track record. Let's see if dual layers can kind of bring things back around. Starting with Rising Ragnarok, we're not really off to the best start. Again, does this layer really scream stamina? No. It's not as bad as the original, but it still just looks kind of like a balance type or something, not really stamina. And then flipping it over, you do have gravity here. It's just kind of bulky, it's heavy. Again, feels like something I would have expected from a defense type, not a stamina type. But I guess it's functional enough. Revolve's fine though, kind of a sharp tip with this free spinning plate around it. Very similar to a round sharp from Metal Fight, which was from Soul Blaze, which was technically a balance type, but I think stamina is probably the right call on this thing. So again, very, very similar to the original Ragnarok. You have a stamina driver with a disc that feels more defense expected, and then a layer that looks nothing like a stamina layer. Not much different. For Holy Horus Suit, it does look a bit more stamina oriented compared to the original Horus Suit, but it still just looks awkward. Kind of a balanced defense type of thing going on, maybe stamina. And then flipping this thing over does reuse claw, fair enough, but I think upper is very awkward. Again, feels a bit more balanced like to me. I have no idea what they were cooking with this motif, like I mentioned with the original. Kind of wish we got a later Horus Suit just to see what they would do with it, but as is, this motif is just really, really awkward. Jaeger Yggdrasil is a fun one. The layer is weird. It doesn't really look like a stamina layer. Again, probably a bit more defense or balance, but I guess not every stamina layer has to be perfectly round. It's close enough. And gravity, again, like I already mentioned, it's kind of weird. But I think Yielding is finally another really good stamina driver. Again, it's like a wider survive, and it's made out of POM. Very much a stamina part. I think because of Yielding, this thing at least kind of gets a pass. It's a bit weird, but close enough. Now for Zillion Zeus, what do I even say about this thing? This layer is close to being a stamina layer. The upper parts and lower parts here are honestly fine. If they just could have connected in like a fairly round fashion, this thing would be fine. But the way these parts here protrude just make this thing so weird, and again, doesn't really feel like a stamina type. And then the metal balls. Historically, metal balls were used for defense, but honestly I think it's fine for either stamina or defense, so who really cares? But then flipping this thing over, well, Infinity's fine, but weight is really weird, because ball type of drivers have been used for defense types, which is the case in Burst, and it was pretty common in previous gens as well. And a metal ball does definitely feel like a defense type of driver, but it's not, so I'm not really sure to make this thing. Again, feels like it does kind of incorporate more defense stuff here, which is going to be a common theme. Next is Psychic Phantom. This is a very, very round layer. Definitely a good representative of stamina. And then flipping it over, I think Polish also does work very well. It's very round, smooth edge. It was very good for opposite spin stuff back in the day. It does use weight, which again is really weird. I guess because it's at least a metal ball, it does have more stamina than normal. And because it has more stamina than normal, with less friction, you could kind of give weight a pass, at least on this setup, because it is very, very stamina expected aside from it. So kind of like Jaeger Yggdrasil, except inverted in terms of the parts, so it kind of gets a pass, I guess. I think Jormungand also gets a pass. The layer is at least fairly round. It does reuse Infinity, and then Cycle, again, very similar to Survive, but with some free spin. Except it's not the bottom part itself this time, it's this, outer part here that can spin. I think that's close enough. This is a pretty solid example of a basic stamina type, I would say. But that's it for dual layers. I think dual layers weren't really a huge improvement, maybe a slight one. Also, something interesting to note, there were 5 stamina types in the single layer era, and 6 in the dual layer era. So stamina types did get quite a bit of representation early on in Burst, and this will continue into Beyblade Burst God, but after that things will get weird. But anyway, I guess I should probably get into Beyblade Burst God. And right away, Blaze Ragnarok is a great example of a stamina type out of nowhere. Yeah, they fixed Ragnarok. This layer is fairly round. The whole stamina wing stuff does give it more airflow for better stamina. Maybe not the most flashy gimmick or even effective, but it's something. 4-Cross is functional for stamina, and then Flugel got the blades there for better stamina. Shape is similar to Survive. This thing actually does function as a stamina type. Surprising. Drain Fafnir does something much different, which is spin stealing. So yeah, the whole thing about this is to be an opposite spin bay that equalizes. It's a pretty cool idea for a stamina bay, and I think they pulled it off well here. Drain Fafnir is at least reasonably round, has some rubber as well. I think 8 is a solid stamina choice, and then nothing as well. Has the whole shock absorption thing. That could probably be a defense thing, but stamina is fine enough. And the shape does look stamina enough. So I think Drain Fafnir, while it is functionally different than most stamina types, it does get by. And creates a brand new niche for them even, so that's really good. Do I really need to talk about Maximum Garuda? I don't think so. It's a giant circle. It has 8 flugel, I mean... Yeah, this thing, it is a stamina bait, and I don't think there's any debate for that. Well, we were off to a good start, but now we have Guardian Kirbyus. Why? Every single other Kirbyus before or after this was a defense type, but for some reason Guardian Kirbyus decides to be a stamina type. I don't know why. The layer itself is thinner than normal, and the whole POM chain stuff, it's kind of a weird in-between of stamina and defense in my opinion. It also does use heavy, which I've also talked about already being kind of weird. But yeah, it does use revolve, which is stamina. And yeah, types in Beyblade Burst are dictated by the driver. I don't think that's really a great measurement of what a type should be. But that's not the video for this. I'm not getting into the hypothetical argument of what types are. That's a different topic. But yeah, this is technically a stamina type, but it doesn't really entirely feel like one. Not great. Galaxy Zeus is very much an in-between of stamina and defense in my opinion. I mean, it's a fairly bulky layer. You also have 4 metal balls now. It's close enough, but kinda odd. You also have 4 meteor, which is okay. Planet though? I mean, a free spinning metal ball, that's pretty good. Then you have these 2 extra metal balls. It also makes the driver kind of an awkward shape. This thing just feels very bulky, like it was kind of prioritizing that over, you know, stamina. So it's just a weird in-between, which, again, we're going to be seeing more of. And speaking of that, next up is Orichalcum. Although this one just feels straight up like a defense type. I mean, it is a pretty round bay, but its whole gimmick is that these parts here kind of come out a little bit, which then clamps down on the driver to give it better burst resistance. That feels like defense to me. I think outer is just a very solid kind of general disc. Octa does come to a point, but just looking at this thing, you can't tell me that's stamina over defense, come on. Like, that just has a lot of bulk. This thing definitely does have some stamina elements, but I don't know, it just feels more defense to me. Deep Chaos does kind of recover though. It does have this outer vertical bound thing going on, which I think kind of would work better on a defense type. But I guess deflecting stuff on a stamina bay is okay. I mean, beyond that, I guess it's kind of frail, so sure. However, the part selection is perfectly fine. I mean, you have forward flow, and of course bearing, which is very much stamina. So the layer is maybe a little bit questionable, but the part selection makes up for it, and I think this is actually a pretty good stamina bay. And lastly, we have Screw Trident. This thing is a defense type. I don't care what anyone says. This layer is just really bulky. It has a whole shock absorption thing. It feels defense. Flipping it over, I mean, 8 bump. 8's okay, but bump, again, that just feels defense. And then Wedge? I guess Wedge is stamina. It's fine. But the rest of the bay just does not feel like it should be a stamina type. Like, this layer just isn't. So, while we started pretty well in Beyblade Burst good, and I think Deep Chaos is good, there are a lot of weird bays here that do really kind of cross over to defense to some degree, in my opinion. Also, there were 8 entire bays here, the most stamina bays we've ever had in one line. And after this, for Chosets, well, we move down to 4. Yeah, that's when stamina starts to fall off. So starting off with that, we have Crash Ragnarok. This thing's fine. Layer's pretty round. Keeps the stamina wings, except now they're metal. That makes sense with, you know, Chosets. I think 11 Reach is kind of awkward, more balanced feeling to me than anything else. But Wedge is okay. Overall, I mean, I don't think it's as good of a representative of stamina opposed to Blaze Ragnarok, but it's not bad. Archer Hercules is just weird. This thing does not look like a stamina bay at all. It also has the Orichalcum thing, where the outer parts of the layer kind of push outward. Doesn't clamp in on anything though, but still. It just looks like a defense layer, or maybe even a balance layer to me. I don't think the disc of 13 helps its case here. Eternal, though, is definitely stamina. It's just kind of an alternate take on Revolve's concept. But yeah, this one, it's just weird. Geist Fafnir is functional, though. The layer does kind of look like an attack type, but when you factor in that these parts here, you know, kind of go inward from the hinges and stuff, I think it does become more functional. It's also rubber, opposite spin. Doesn't look like it, but I think it is still a functional stamina layer. And then, you know, flipping it over, I think 8- proof definitely works, absorb as well. So it's a weird one, but it's realistically probably the second best representative of stamina in show sets, and still solid in concept, works as a spin stealer, it's fine. The one bay that does pull off stamina properly though is Air Knight. I mean, it's just really round. Kind of an alternate take on Maxim Garuda. I think Garuda is actually a bit better than this in some ways, but this is still like close enough. I'd argue 12 is a bit awkward as a disc, but it has expand, so I think it's fine. And obviously, you know, Eternal. Yeah, this thing does feel very, very much like a stamina type. So Chosets is very small and kind of awkward, but we at least have one properly functional stamina bay and also a good spin stealer, which has become a noteworthy subset of stamina bays in Burst, so it's okay, I guess. Moving on to GT, we have two, or yes, kind of 4 bays. We'll get to that. First up though, Wizard Fafnir. I mean, the layer is definitely stamina. It's a spin stealer. It's definitely more round this time. Sen works. Everything here is fine. I do think Ratchet is kind of an awkward part. It does feel kind of defense, but at the same time, whatever, it's good enough. And then Rise is very much stamina, with a small point and the ability to kind of keep itself upright, which I think works for a spin stealer. So, for the most part, yeah, this thing's functional. Now, two of those weird prize bay variant things in GT are stamina bays, which is why I said 2 or 4. The first is Cosmo Valkyrie, which I guess the Cosmo base does make sense, it's very round. The underneath especially being super round, so functional. 11, kind of weird, but works. Eternal's fine. Yeah, this just feels like the basic stamina bay that we got for GT, and yeah, it works. The other variant was Flare Dragon. This one's very much, I think, defense. I mean, it uses Sen, that's fine, but like Flare, it's just so big and bulky. It's still round enough though, so I think defense makes more sense. Also, I mean, around with these 4 metal balls, the extra bulk of it as well, I think, makes sense for that. And Planet, like I already said, does feel a bit more defense-like, so yeah, they probably could have just called this one defense and called it a day, but here we are. Heaven Pegasus is a really cool bay, actually. I think it's like a really strange outlier for stamina, because it's not a fully traditional stamina bay because of its gimmick, but it has its own niche. So it is pretty round, has scent. I think it does still function as a stamina layer, but when it clicks twice, these parts come out, which are meant to be hits, and reverse the clicks. Very, very cool gimmick. I think a healing kind of bay does kind of work for stamina, so not bad. Then the parts here, I mean, 10 proof, that's functional, low, kind of an alternate take on Revolve, yet again, functional. So yeah, it's just a solid stamina type, but I think the reverse click thing is really cool and interesting, and does give it its own niche. So GT, not bad. Flare Dragon's the only outlier, but we're pretty used to like these weird defense hybrids at this point. But we have a regular stamina bay, a spin stealer, and then this thing. Good enough. Moving on to Super King, we have Goliath Ragnarok. This is close enough to a stamina bay. I mean, it's clearly very round. You have the 3 stamina wings now as well. Sure, 1 stamina is fine. And then Wheel, I think, is okay. It could maybe switch into defense. Like, I could see that for sure, but it's fine for stamina. And then it reuses Revolve, which is definitely stamina, so I think Goliath Ragnarok just works as a baseline bay for stamina in Super King. And we only have one other bay, Mirage Fafnir. While it's reasonably round, coated in rubber, 2 stamina, it's pretty triangular, does have the whole counter mode thing going on too, but in absorb mode it pairs well, so that's fine, and then nothing's reused, I already talked about nothing, which works. So yeah, this thing I think is just a very functional spin stealer. There's only 2 stamina bays in Super King, like I said, but they kind of just fill both niches. Regular stamina bay and spin stealer. It works. And lastly, we have DB/BU. Cyclone Ragnarok, I think the layer is fine. It's pretty round. You have the much larger stamina wings as well. It's pretty functional. I think Giga is a pretty odd one. It does kind of have the whole gravity thing going on. I guess you could argue Wheel was kind of like heavy, but I think Wheel pulls it off a bit better, whereas Giga, this thing does feel a bit closer to defense to me. But it's fun enough at this point. And then Never, I mean, it's a sharp piece, kind of, that free spins has POM surrounding it. I mean, yeah, this thing is, it's good enough. It's kind of a baseline stamina bay for the line. And then we have Vanish Fafnir, again, I mean, this thing's just a good spin stealer. It works. Vanish is very, very absorption based, with it being almost entirely made out of rubber. You can argue it's so bulky though that it does breach into defense a little bit, but it still has a spin stealing niche, so I would say it's still fine as is. And then flipping it over, we have tapered, which I think is fine. Kick is also fine, at least in shape. I think the whole like plate gimmick here, where it kind of is meant to catch on the stadium ground and like kick itself back into battle, it does feel a bit defense-like, but at the same time, it's fine. Like, stamina was really, really preaching into defense by this point, like I said. Cyclone Ragnarok has a bit of extra bulk to it, especially with, you know, Giga. This thing's pretty bulky, but they both fill the rules fine enough. It's okay. Save Your Perseus is just the example to give to why drivers should not dictate types. Like, this layer, it's an attack layer. Perseus is an attack core, at least in my opinion. 3 can be used for whatever. Savior was literally an attack blade. Giga, we've already talked about, but yeah, Bearing Dash is stamina, so the whole thing has to be stamina. Yeah, this one, I mean, it's kind of just a throw-together combo to get Perseus an actual, you know, combo, so it's whatever. We also have Astral Hello Kitty. This thing is just Astral Spriggan, except reskinned, and it swaps out, you know, Quattro for Revolve Dash, so it's stamina. I do think that 0 and over can be functional for stamina though, so that's fine. But yeah, Astral, yeah, this is definitely a balance part. It's a reskin, it's a special release, so whatever. But for our final actual bay, we have Wind Knight. This thing is really, really round. Kind of has the vertical bound thing going on too, with the core gimmick. Also, I mean Moon. It does have the whole Lock disc thing going on. Moon's very round though, so I think stamina is probably the right call here. Bounce, I mean, you have like the sharp tip here with, you know, the shock absorption gimmick. It's kind of weird, and it's not really a great part, but I guess I'd probably call it a stamina part. And yeah, the whole thing with, you know, wind is that, well, you know, it has the airflow gimmick. Speaking of wind, I apologize, there's probably been a lot of wind in the background. Very common byproduct of where I live, but anyway. I mean, an airflow gimmick with a very round bay. It's a good sound type, and a very good bay to end on, I think. Yeah, DB was decent. I think it does really breach into defense a lot of the time with the main 3 bays. The other 2 are just weird outliers that are barely even mainline bays. You could argue they aren't, but anyway. I think the line just gets very blurred with some of the actual bays here though. But yeah, stamina types are just odd. From the start of the generation, they were weird. I feel like they were always kind of breaching into defense to some degree. I think you can expect a level of overlap, but I feel like in Burst especially, they really, really like to overlap a lot. Like some of these parts I could just see being defense and not questioning it. I think drivers for the most part are fine, but discs are typically pretty questionable, although discs can be multi-purpose, so it's not a huge deal. But layers, yeah, these things were pretty varied. Some of them are very much stamina parts, no question. Others just feel more like defense or sit somewhere in between. And you even have some that just feel like attack or balance layers. So why were they like this? Well, I think it's more just a byproduct of Burst's design philosophy and how crazy they got. The fact that I think types just aren't as clear-cut as they could be, but I don't think they should be clear-cut actually. I'm not a huge fan of types even existing in the first place, but if we have to have them, in my opinion, better that we don't completely restrict bays to being a certain thing just because of it has to fit into a type. Yeah, it does make types kind of arbitrary, but I'd rather them experiment like with these bays than not. So even though it's weird, I'm not necessarily complaining about it. Well, I guess maybe I'm complaining a little bit about how types are structured and defined, but again, I would much rather have varied bays and just a bunch of the same stuff over and over again just to fit into this arbitrary box, but that's just what I think about it. So hopefully this was like somewhat interesting. I do plan on making other videos for types. I'll probably do balance next, I don't know, maybe next month or June or something. I think that one will be a fun topic because I think balance types in Burst are the best they've ever been. I think there's a lot to talk about with those. So until next time, thanks for watching and bye-bye.